What if the reason love keeps breaking down isn't about communication styles, timing, or compatibility, but something much deeper? Something older, something we rarely name. What if some men are cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable, but simply unequipped? Not because they don't feel, but because they feel more than they know how to handle. He wants connection. He wants love. But when it gets too close, something in him recoils. Not by choice, by reflex. And it's not just him. You feel it too. The confusion. The tension between what's being said and what's actually happening. He says he cares, but he's not really there. Or he is, until you need more than he knows how to give. Carl Jung called this hidden force the mother complex. Not because it's about blaming mothers, but because our earliest emotional imprint often begins with the mother or mother figure. That bond sets the stage. It shapes how we respond to intimacy, conflict, love, and even ourselves. For many men, that relationship was complicated. Maybe she was emotionally overwhelming. Maybe she was distant. Maybe love came with expectations. Be good, stay small, make her proud. Whatever it was, it left a mark. So he adapted. He toughened up. He shut down certain parts of himself. He learned to survive emotionally by staying guarded. And now, as a grown man, that survival strategy becomes a relationship strategy. He pulls away. He self-sabotages. He doesn't know how to hold the love he says he wants. And his partner? She's left wondering, why do I feel so alone in something that's supposed to be mutual? This isn't just a relationship issue. It's a soul issue. A developmental wound that most men never learn to name, let alone heal. But here's the truth. This isn't a life sentence. These patterns aren't permanent, and understanding them doesn't weaken a man. It sets him free. Because when we explore the mother complex, we're not talking about pathology. We're talking about the unconscious stories we inherited and whether we're finally ready to rewrite them. In this series, we're going to explore 6 psychological reasons some men can't love deeply. Not to judge, not to shame, but to understand and to heal. Because when we stop reacting blindly, we can start choosing consciously. And that's where real intimacy begins. So, if you've ever felt stuck in love, if you've been the one pulling away, or the one chasing someone who won't stay, let's begin with reason 1. Emotional dependence, disguised as independence. This is one of the most common patterns in men who struggle to love deeply, and it's also one of the most misunderstood. He looks independent. He acts like he doesn't need much. He might be successful, self-reliant, even admired for how in control he seems. He handles life. He doesn't ask for help. He prides himself on being unshakable. But behind that strong exterior, there's often a different story playing out. You see it in the way he disconnects emotionally. You see it in the way he refuses to be vulnerable until he's overwhelmed. You see it in the way he pushes people away, only to cling tightly when he feels them slipping. What looks like emotional strength is often emotional fear. What sounds like "I've got this" is sometimes just another way of saying, "I don't know how to let anyone close." This isn't arrogance, and it's not a flaw in character. It's a defense. It's what happens when a man grows up with a complicated bond to the mother archetype, the original blueprint for safety, affection, and connection. Maybe he had a mother who was loving, but overbearing, or one who was absent emotionally, even if she was physically present. Maybe he learned early that expressing needs led to guilt, shame, or rejection. That, depending on someone, meant being controlled or disappointed. So he did the only thing that made sense at the time. He shut those needs down. He learned to survive emotionally by going inward. He became self-contained. He developed what looked like independence, but really, he was just hiding. Because when you're a boy trying to manage overwhelming emotions alone, you build walls fast. You stop asking. You stop needing. You stop trusting. And as you grow, those defenses grow with you. They become habits, then personality traits. Eventually, they get mistaken for strength. But they're not strength. They're silence, isolation. A form of emotional loneliness that keeps others at arm's length. And here's the paradox. The man who claims to need nothing often ends up needing everything. but doesn't know how to ask for it in a healthy way. So his relationships suffer. He gives just enough to keep things alive, but never enough to feel truly connected. He disappears emotionally, then resurfaces when things fall apart, and his partner is left in a constant cycle of confusion. Do I lean in? Do I give him space? Why do I feel like I'm too much and not enough at the same time? This push-pull dynamic isn't manipulation. It's unconscious. It's driven by a nervous system that still doesn't believe it's safe to need others. Because somewhere inside, he still feels like that little boy, told to toughen up, to be good, to be strong, to not feel so much. And even now, he still thinks that opening up means losing control, that asking for help is weakness, that being seen emotionally makes him unsafe. But it's not true anymore. What was once protection has become a prison, and he's outgrown it, even if he doesn't know how to live without it yet. The journey forward starts in small, quiet ways, not with big emotional breakthroughs, but with the willingness to tell the truth. The truth about how lonely it feels to always hold it in. The truth about how much pressure it takes to always be fine. The truth about the ache of never letting anyone fully see you. When a man starts telling that truth, first to himself, then to someone he trusts, everything starts to shift. Because he doesn't need to be less independent. He needs to become more emotionally honest. There's a huge difference. He doesn't have to collapse into dependence. He just has to realize that real intimacy isn't weakness. It's power. The kind of power that can sit in discomfort and not run. The kind of power that can say, I'm struggling, and not feel ashamed. The kind of power that can let someone in without needing to control how they respond. And for his partner, it's important to understand that this emotional distance isn't personal. It's patterned. It's how he survived. But now, it's also how he's keeping love just out of reach. She can't force him to open, but she can stop walking on eggshells. She can stop making herself small to make room for his avoidance. She can hold space without carrying the whole emotional load, because love doesn't require perfection. It requires presence, mutual presence. And presence means both people showing up, messy, human, honest. For the man listening, if this is you, if you're tired of holding it all in, if you're tired of being strong at the cost of feeling anything, this is your invitation. Not to fall apart, but to finally take the weight off. To stop proving something no one's asking you to prove. You're allowed to need. You're allowed to feel. You're allowed to show up in love as a full emotional being, not just the one who keeps everything under control. You don't lose power when you soften. You become powerful in a way you've never known. And love, real love, only grows from that kind of truth. Let's move to reason 2, a fear of emotional maturity and responsibility. Some men don't run from love. They run from the weight of what love asks them to become. They crave connection. They show up at first with full presence. It's real. But when it deepens, when the connection starts asking for direction, grounding, or stability, they start to disappear. Not because they don't care, but because something inside them doesn't feel ready to carry that weight. It's easy to say these men are afraid of commitment. But commitment isn't the problem. It's what commitment represents: responsibility, leadership, depth, consistency. It's not just about being with one person. It's about being someone. Someone others can trust. Someone who can hold space, not just take it. Someone who can stop floating and land in their life. For a lot of men, that idea doesn't feel empowering. It feels suffocating. They associate maturity with pressure. They associate responsibility with failure. They look at adulthood and see exhaustion, disconnection, and self-betrayal. Maybe they watched their father burn out under expectations he never chose. Maybe they saw men give up their joy, their dreams, their fire. Maybe they were never taught that masculinity could include softness, uncertainty, or change. So when life invites them to grow, to step into something solid and sustainable, it feels like a trap. They don't say this out loud. They might not even know they're feeling it, but it shows up in their actions. They keep everything open-ended. They resist structure. They avoid routine, planning, even showing up when it's not convenient. They chase inspiration, then lose interest. They start things but don't follow through. And when asked to go deeper in a relationship, they deflect. They say it's not the right time. They need space. They need clarity. They need to work on themselves. And maybe they do. But if this pattern repeats itself over and over, it's not about timing. It's about fear. This is the boy inside the man, still clinging to the idea that adulthood means abandoning who he really is. And so he stays in motion, always searching, always becoming, but never arriving. Jung called this the puer aeternus, the eternal youth. The man who refuses to be pinned down because he still equates freedom with not being responsible for anything that might hurt. And yet, what he's really searching for, stability, purpose, meaning, can only be found by staying. By growing up, not growing cold, not shutting down, not becoming a machine, but by learning how to carry life, not run from it. Maturity isn't the end of your fire. It's the container that lets your fire create something. Responsibility doesn't kill your soul. It focuses it. And love, real love, needs someone who won't vanish when the winds change. For the man caught in this pattern, there's often a deep ache under all the drifting. A longing to finally land, to finally be enough, to finally build something that lasts. But he doesn't trust that he can. He doesn't trust that maturity can be anything other than a slow death. So he keeps breaking things before they break him. He lets relationships fall apart so he doesn't have to confront what it would mean to stay. To be still. To grow up and actually take emotional responsibility for himself and someone else. But here's the truth. Maturity is not a trap. It's not a loss. It's not a cage. It's a choice. And it gets to be defined on your terms. It gets to include your soul, your creativity, your wildness, without discarding your integrity. Being responsible doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming honest. It means choosing presence over avoidance. It means showing up even when you'd rather run. It means staying with the conversation that makes you uncomfortable. It means saying, I'm not sure, but I'm still here. It's okay to be scared of that. Most people are, especially when responsibility was modeled as burnout. Especially when no one ever showed you that you could hold something without being crushed by it. But the only way through is to stop escaping every time the opportunity to become something greater appears. You don't lose yourself when you grow up. You meet parts of yourself you've never known. And the moment you stop running from responsibility, you start creating a life that you can be proud of. Not a life you perform. Not a life you fantasize about, but one you actually live. You become someone your partner can lean on. Not because you never fall, but because you know how to get back up. You become someone who can be in love without needing love to constantly affirm your worth. Because you've stopped outsourcing your wholeness. You've stopped making freedom the excuse for staying small. And you've started realizing that love isn't trying to tie you down. It's trying to give you a place to rise from. To the man who fears maturity, you don't have to become your father. You don't have to repeat the version of adulthood that you saw break other men. You can write a new one that holds both strength and softness. One that allows you to lead and be held. One where you stop hiding behind potential and start becoming who you were always meant to be. Let's move to reason 3. Idealization of women and the fantasy of the perfect partner. This one is tricky, because it doesn't feel like fear at first. It feels like love. He falls hard. He says you're unlike anyone he's ever met. He calls you magic. You feel seen, chosen, adored. And for a while, it's intoxicating. He leans in quickly. He opens up. He tells you everything. It feels like a movie, like fate, like you finally found something real. But over time, something shifts. It's subtle at first. Maybe he grows distant. Maybe he picks fights over things that don't matter. Maybe he becomes cold, irritable, withdrawn. Or maybe he just disappears. What happened? The answer often is that he wasn't falling in love with you. He was falling in love with a projection. In Jungian psychology, this is the work of the anima, the inner feminine within a man's psyche. If a man hasn't integrated his emotional, intuitive, relational side, if he's cut off from vulnerability, tenderness, and introspection, he doesn't recognize those qualities as part of himself. So he searches for them in someone else. He finds a woman who reflects what he's missing, not just physically, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. And suddenly, she becomes the answer. She becomes everything, not because of who she is, but because of who he's unconsciously made her represent. His lost emotional self, his sensitivity, his creativity, his capacity to feel deeply. In the beginning, it's beautiful. He's present, engaged, romantic, fully available, but it's not sustainable because no one can live up to an ideal. She gets tired. She starts showing up as human with moods, flaws, needs, inconsistencies. And when that happens, the fantasy breaks. He doesn't know how to reconcile the image he fell in love with the woman standing in front of him now, so he detaches. Emotionally, sexually, spiritually. He might not even know why, but something feels off, and he can't get back to that original high. The truth is, there was never anything wrong with her. She just stopped playing the part of his unconscious muse and started being herself. For her, this is devastating. She feels like she did everything right. She gave him her trust, her body, her openness, and it still wasn't enough. It's not that she wasn't enough, it's that she became real. And he wasn't ready for real. Because real love isn't an escape. It's a when he realizes the qualities he admires in her are actually his to develop. He doesn't need a goddess. He needs a relationship with the parts of himself he's been afraid to claim. That might mean slowing down, being alone for a while, letting go of the high and learning how to sit with the quiet. It means learning how to feel, not just when someone else makes it safe, but because he chooses to. It means engaging in creativity, introspection, dreams, not as a performance, but as integration. Because when a man develops his own emotional life, he stops needing a partner to be the emotional life for him. He stops needing to be rescued. He stops casting roles. He starts relating. And the way he sees women changes. They're no longer goddesses or saviors or emotional mirrors. They're people, humans, equals. He can love them as they are, not as projections, not as fantasies, not as symbols of what he's missing. And that's when real intimacy begins. Because idealization is easy, but staying connected through imperfection, that's love. To the man who keeps falling in love with the perfect woman, only to grow restless or disappointed when she shows her humanness, it's time to stop chasing an image. It's time to start building a relationship with your whole self. You don't need her to carry your emotional world. You just need to stop abandoning it. And to the woman who's been placed on the pedestal, you're allowed to come down. You're allowed to be tired, messy, real. You're not here to be someone's missing piece. You're here to be met. The fantasy was never your burden to carry. So if you're both ready to let it go, what remains might be quieter, slower, more grounded, but it will be true. And truth is where love begins. Let's move to reason 4. Repressed rage and the fear of rejection that comes with it. Some men don't just struggle to love, they struggle to feel at all. There's a kind of numbness, a fog that hangs between them and their emotions. They don't lash out, they don't explode. They just shut down. They might seem calm, even polite, even gentle, but underneath there's tension, pressure. Something that's been sealed off for years, maybe decades. You see it when they go silent after conflict, when they withdraw without explanation, when something triggers them, but they pretend it didn't. You see it in their eyes, blank, flat, distant. What's happening inside is harder to see, but it matters. For many men, there's an entire ocean of unprocessed rage just below the surface. Not loud, violent rage, but the quiet kind. The kind that forms when a boy had to stay good in order to be loved. Maybe he was punished for speaking up. Maybe he was shamed for showing anger. Maybe he had to be the peacemaker, the calm one, the one who never caused trouble. So he buried the rage. He tucked it deep inside his body, and he built a life around appearing okay. But anger doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It festers, it hardens, it becomes part of the nervous system, a silent, constant threat. And in relationships, it doesn't stay hidden, it leaks. He might not yell, but he'll withdraw without warning. He might not name what's bothering him, but his energy will go cold. He might never say what he needs, but he'll resent you for not reading his mind. And the partner feels it. The tension, the mood shifts, the invisible wall that rises out of nowhere. She starts to feel punished, without ever being told what the crime was. She starts to question herself. She might even start to carry the blame just to keep the peace. But the truth is, she's not angry at her. Not really. He's angry at what he never got to say. He's angry at how often he had to hold it together. He's angry at the moments when he needed care and no one noticed. He's angry at the pressure to always be composed, agreeable, and emotionally contained. And underneath that anger is grief. And under that, fear. Because for him, expressing anger still feels dangerous. It still feels like rejection is just one emotion away. That if he's fully honest, if he shows what's really going on inside, he'll be left, abandoned, alone. So he holds it in until he can't anymore. And then the emotions come out sideways. The solution isn't to let the anger take over, it's to give it a voice, before it turns into something toxic. It's about creating space to feel what was never safe to feel. That could mean journaling the words he never said, speaking the truth in therapy, screaming into a pillow, hitting the gym with intention. Anything that allows the body to release what it's been holding without shame. Because anger isn't a flaw, it's a signal, it's a message. It says, something hurt, something mattered, something was violated. When a man learns to listen to that voice without letting it control him, he reconnects with his power, with his boundaries, with his capacity to love without suppressing himself. He no longer needs to punish his partner for what he never processed. He no longer needs to vanish emotionally when things get hard. He can speak clearly, he can stay present, he can fight without fearing that conflict means the end of love. Because here's the truth. Conflict doesn't destroy intimacy. Avoiding it does. Repressed rage is the enemy of connection. But expressed, understood anger with honesty and humility, can be one of the most healing forces in a relationship. It clears the air. It restores balance. It lets both people be human. To the man who's been holding it in, you don't have to be the good guy at the expense of being real. You don't have to go silent just to stay safe. You don't have to punish yourself or the people you love, because no one taught you how to feel. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to speak. You're allowed to take up emotional space. And to the partner on the other side, his silence isn't your fault. His moods aren't yours to fix. You can hold compassion without holding the burden. Because love isn't about absorbing someone's rage. It's about creating space for truth, even when that truth shakes things up. Let's move to reason 5. The good boy persona, and the quiet cost of losing yourself to please others. Some men don't leave their relationships. They disappear inside them. They do what's expected. They keep things peaceful. They listen. They agree. They show up on time with flowers, saying the right things. They're kind. They're helpful. They don't make waves. But something always feels missing. It's hard to explain. He's not doing anything wrong, but he's not fully there either. And over time, his partner begins to feel it. That emotional distance dressed up as politeness. That sense that he's holding something back, even when he says everything's fine. What you're seeing is the legacy of a boy who was raised to be good, instead of whole. From a young age, he learned that being accepted meant being agreeable. That to stay safe, he had to suppress anger, needs, and sometimes even desire. He learned to read the room before he read himself. So he became what others needed. A helper, a fixer, a peacekeeper. And somewhere along the way, he lost touch with what was real. He confused approval with love, performance with presence. And now as a man, he doesn't know where his truth ends and others' expectations begin. He's not lying, he's disconnected. He's so used to adapting, he doesn't know how to just be. And the cost? Intimacy without authenticity. Connection without depth. A relationship built on what's easy, not what's honest. He may feel numb, checked out, like he's going through the motions in a life that technically works, but doesn't move him. He might even start resenting his partner, not because she's demanding, but because he's never voiced what he actually wants. He gave himself away, piece by piece, and now he doesn't know how to ask for anything back. But here's the thing. You don't have to be good to be loved. You have to be real. Authenticity isn't selfish. It's how we stay connected to our aliveness. And when a man starts telling the truth, even in small ways, he begins to return to himself. That truth might be messy. It might cause friction, but it's also where intimacy finally begins. Because love doesn't need your performance, it needs your presence. To the man who's always been the good boy, you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to disappoint people in order to stay honest. And to the partner who feels something is off, trust your instinct. Ask the harder questions. Invite the real person forward. Because no matter how good it looks from the outside, a relationship without truth can never feel whole. And now, the final piece of the puzzle. Reason 6. Unconscious loyalty to the mother figure, and the quiet ways it blocks love. Some men struggle in relationships not because they don't care, but because deep down they're already emotionally taken, not by another partner, but by someone from long ago, their mother, or who she symbolized in their life. This isn't about inappropriate relationships. It's about invisible emotional contracts that were never broken, bonds that were never redefined, roles that were never left behind. In childhood, a boy may have been his mother's confidant, her emotional support, her source of meaning or control. He may have learned to keep her happy at the expense of himself. He may have felt responsible for her feelings, her mood, her pain, and if no one helped him untangle that loyalty, he carries it into adulthood. Now, without realizing it, he brings that same dynamic into his relationships. He feels torn between showing up for his partner and staying emotionally fused to his mother's needs or legacy. You can feel it in the way he avoids full intimacy, in how he holds back just enough to keep you guessing, in how he defends her, prioritizes her, or places her on a pedestal no one else is allowed to touch. You can feel it in the guilt, the pull, the sense that no matter how close you get, there's always a third person in the room. Sometimes she's alive, sometimes she's long gone, but her influence lives on, inside him. And here's the difficult part. Until that bond is revisited, he can't fully choose his partner. Not emotionally, not psychologically, because part of him is still living in service to a past role, a child's idea of love and duty, not a man's conscious choice. Breaking that bond doesn't mean cutting ties. It means creating space. It means letting go of the internalized belief that he's responsible for her emotional world. It means grieving the child who gave too much, grieving the illusion that love equals sacrifice, and then rebuilding. Choosing partnership not out of obligation, but presence. Not to replace the past, but to build something new. This shift is quiet, but it's powerful. When a man reclaims his emotional freedom, he stops living from guilt, he stops loving from duty, and he begins to love with full grounded presence. To the man who feels torn, you're allowed to choose your own life. You're allowed to love your mother and love your partner, but only if you stop confusing the two. And to the partner who always feels like second place, you're not imagining it. But you also can't fix it. He has to see the pattern, and he has to decide not to abandon anyone, but to finally come home to himself. If any part of this series hit something real for you, you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just beginning to see the truth behind the patterns, the silence, the shutdown, the distance. Some men were never taught how to love deeply, only how to perform, protect, or disappear. But understanding isn't weakness. It's freedom. Every defense you've carried had a purpose once. Every wall you built came from survival. But now, if you're ready, those patterns can become choices. They don't have to own you anymore. Because real love, real connection requires more than good intentions. It requires wholeness. And wholeness begins when you stop performing, stop blaming, and start showing up with your full, imperfect, present self. This isn't about becoming a new person. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that were never allowed to exist. The soft parts, the strong parts, the messy, brilliant, fully alive self beneath all the armor. To the man listening, you get to write a new story. Not one where you're always fixing or hiding, but one where you're fully present in your own life and in your love. And to the partners who've stayed, waited, hoped, your clarity, your boundaries, your care, they matter too. This work isn't yours to carry alone, but your voice is part of the healing. So here's the invitation. If this resonated, don't just move on. Reflect. Ask yourself, what am I still carrying that isn't mine? Who have I been trying to protect by staying small? What kind of love do I want to build? And am I willing to become the person who can hold it? If you found meaning in this, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Start the conversation. Invite the awareness. We heal in connection. And if you're doing this work or ready to start, subscribe, stick around, and know this. You're not doing it alone anymore. This is the work. And it's worth it.